starting.
Okay, so I'll just ask again, what was the original premise of A Different World?
The original premise, as I understand it, was really to do a series that would have an inside look into a historically black college, the life of the school, what happens, the students, the teachers, and ultimately, hopefully, encourage young people to go to school. I mean, Bill and Camille have always been very big on education. They donated about $10 million to Spelman for this, and education is big for them as just personally as parents.
So when you came on board, did Carsey Werner and Bill Cosby say, "This is what we want changed," or did they say, "Debbie, you change it"?
When I came on, they were like, "Debbie, fix this, make it relevant, make it more real." I mean, it's like there was no hot sauce on the table. I mean, if you did a yeshiva university, they don't have some matzo ball soup somewhere, then what is it really about? I mean, who is this about?
And you told me that they gave you kind of the power, the authority to make pretty much any changes you wanted to do. What was the first thing you did?
Well, the first thing I did was really try to communicate to the writers that we needed to connect with the actors and vice versa, because that was the missing link. If I could solve that problem, that would be more than halfway home to making the series relevant and even more dynamic. That would be it. And that was not an easy task, because when I came on, there were people that were, I sat down with a fellow executive, and he was telling me, well, I want to bring in this person to direct and that person, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I was like, sorry, but I'm going to be directing every episode. And they were like, what? I said, it's really Bill Cosby's idea. It really was his idea for me to be hands-on all the way. So it was, I didn't want to relieve anybody of their jobs and their, ability to help. Let's solve this problem together. But it was a bit of rearranging for them to understand who I really was and what my task was going to be, and that I really had the authority to do whatever.
Did you have other goals at the beginning, or did you kind of discover your goals as you made the changes?
Well, what it was I looked at every episode, and I also saw a lot of foolishness. I'm all for laughter, and buffoonery is okay, but to an end. What is it about? We don't have time to do an episode at a black university where their assignment is to take care of an egg. No. We're dealing with serious issues out here between education, poverty, joblessness, pregnancy, drugs, gangs. We have a lot of issues. And this is a historically black college, and we want to put ourselves on a level with other colleges. Like Howard University is the Harvard. It's always been the Harvard to us. And we have professors that are so dynamic and so incredibly gifted that they've been trying to extract them to go to these other big Ivy League schools, but they are committed because there's a purpose here. We have a purpose. So I needed to do that, but I also needed to bring in the life. There was no fraternity life. I mean, how do you do a historically black college and you don't have fraternities and sororities, stamping around? Not even. That's not even real. Every Friday at Howard University, you go up on the hill and it's a song fest. And it's an homage right back to African culture, the boot dance, all that stamping and stomping that comes right out of it is cultural DNA that is still happening, and the whole idea of gathering. So relevancy, cultural aspects, and new characters. So I wanted to get some new characters on the show. And that's when I discovered Cree Summers, and it was not just Cree, there were other people, but also how do we use Sinbad? How do we use him? How do we use the Jaleesa character? Jaleesa is the older student, and she needs to show more maturity. I wanted to change how she looked. Her dresses were too short, too many fingernails, too much hair weave. I wanted to get rid of some of that hair weave, some of those fingernails. That was on the first things. So I found Cree Summers, I found Charnel Brown. I wanted to find, who's the young Whoopi Goldberg on this show. Already had Kadeem and Darryl Bell and Jasmine Guy. I had brought her to Los Angeles in Fame. She was my baby from Fame. And when they put her on the show, I was like, ooh, Lord, they getting ready to find out. And she was such a dynamic character. But how do we use these stories? Who is really Whitley's boyfriend? I remember sitting down with Susan Fales, just challenging her that whoever can make her laugh is who can get her. Not the most handsome guy. He was wearing the flip downs and he was kind of looked at as kind of goofy. But no, that boy is more intelligent. He can make her laugh. He can get her. And it ended up being the whole, match for the whole series between him and Whitley and their parents and the mothers. And so my edict for myself was to make it relevant, make it cultural, and just go deeper with the characters and see what's going on, behind the masks.
So Jasmine Guy played Whitley, right?
Yes.
And it was Kadeem Hardison played Dwayne
Wayne.
Right, okay. So why did Lisa Bonet, who was one of Cosby's daughters on the previous show, why did she leave the show?
Well, this was very interesting. When I first took over the show, one of the first things I did was meet with Lisa Bonet. And I adored her from The Cosby Show. I adored her. And she...
Would you have liked it if Lisa Bonet would have went through the many different seasons and the many different episodes of A Different World?
She secreted to me that she was actually pregnant. She had married Lenny Kravitz. And, I guess Bill had his feelings about that because he was possessive in a way. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were his on-camera wife and children, but they still were his. I mean, the way he was with Felicia, too. I mean, that's a whole nother story. She told me she was pregnant, so I said, well, listen, we have to go tell him. So I said, honey, put some shoes on. Don't come up there barefoot. Let's get your best dress. Let's comb your hair, and let's go see him, and let's tell him together. So we got dressed. We went up there. And, ooh, he could see us coming. He saw us a mile away coming. He could see us coming. And he sat there and looked at us. And I said, well, we have some things that we want to tell you. He said, what is it? Are you pregnant? And they were like, oh, my God. He said, well, what's so different about it? He looked at me and said, you were pregnant. Your sister got pregnant. And so now what? And I said to him, I explained to him how I wanted to use it on the show. Because that would be a great thing to see a girl who's upper class kid having a baby, not married because she didn't want to be married. And the girls could root for her. I was explaining all that we could do. Well, honey, that was just, I was blowing smoke and I didn't know it. So he listened to all of that. I got put in place as the new person in charge. We started talking about stories, and then immediately, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later, he says, you know what, Debbie? No. She's pregnant. Denise Huxtable is not pregnant. Lisa Bonet is pregnant, not Denise. So no, you can't have it. No, we're not going to do it. No. So he took her back. I was so mad at him. I wanted to take her, but I understood. He just wanted her back. I thought it would have been great to see that storyline, but so she left us to go back home. And then she ended up getting married on the show over there and, whatever happened over there. So she left the show. And then I also had Marissa Tomei. Marissa Tomei was the only white character on the show. I was excited by that because I was looking at it as the opposite from my own personal experience. I had been the only black kid in a ballet school, the only black kid, the only So what must that be like? Because when I went to Howard University, we had one white student, talented, and that would be very interesting. I had even pitched the idea of Dwayne Wayne taking her home for Thanksgiving dinner and her mother being furious that there's a white girl in the house. Ooh, let's just see the other side of racism, because it does go both ways.
Comments. Would you have loved to see an episode like that? Can you imagine Dwayne Wayne's mother having an attitude to her son dating a white woman?
Let's be clear, it does go both ways. But we didn't get to do that.
So tell me a little more about Bill Cosby, the Bill Cosby that we don't know, who's behind the scenes, an executive.
Bill Cosby is incredibly visionary as an executive. He is looking at what is missing on that palette called network television and saying this is what is needed. And he knows, and he knew then. And he was in power because his show had cornered the whole network. Every show, NBC was number one for how many years? Because of the Cosby Show? He had power, and he was determined to use it to a positive. So Different World came on right after Cosby. That was the deal. We had to keep it going. They would start, and then we catch the baton, and can we keep it going? So as an executive, he was incredibly open. He was also very supportive. A Different World, we did the first show about AIDS on television, the very first. They were all at my house the day that Magic Johnson came forward and revealed he was HIV positive. I never seen young men cry like that. I'm talking about Darryl Bell, Kadeem, everybody, even Glenn Turman, everybody. And we didn't know this was going to happen. Sometimes I would do that, cook food for them just so we could come together. And that's what happened on that day. So I looked at the writers and said, guys, we got to do this. We got to do this story. We have to. It's saving lives. So at first we were going to do one where Magic was actually going to come on the show. But then he became gun shy, and you have to understand that. So we did.
How would you have felt to see Magic Johnson on the TV show A Different World? Me personally, I think it would have elevated the show just a little bit more. Let me know in the comments. I want to know your opinion.
We did our own story, and you would have thought we put Jesus Christ back on the cross the way, advertisers pulled out. It was the first time advertisers ever wanted to see a show. I said, okay, are we going back to that now where the advertisers are really in control? Network was just furious. I remember talking to Warren Littlefield. Warren, why are you screaming at me? Do you know if we save one life, then it's worth it? We need to put it out there. Kids are dying. This is not just some, dream. This is our nightmare. This is real. So we wrote the episode, and I got Whoopi Goldberg, who's a friend of mine, to come and play the teacher. And I knew she was going to win the Oscar that year. They didn't care. They said, we don't care. I'm like, come on, guys. It was in those auditions that I discovered Jada Pinkett. Jada Pinkett Smith auditioned for the part of the young girl that was going to have AIDS. My God, she was incredible. She was incredible. And that's why we didn't hire her, because I said, no, I need her in the show. No. So we hired Tisha Campbell, who was amazing in the part. And Bill Cosby stood up for us. They wanted to yank it. They said there's going to be no advertising. There's not going to be this. And Bill called me and said, well, Miss Trash, you got it going this time. I said, yep. He said, well, you know what? We're going to keep the show. And I don't know how, but it became our highest rated episode, even without advertising support. That Whoopi was there. They knew something was up. Everybody was. We couldn't say what the show was. I couldn't even show a condom. I couldn't even have her take a condom out of her purse. I could point to the purse. I couldn't even show it at that time. That just tells you how dramatically television and the world has changed. And they've opened their minds, and they have to. It's not even a choice anymore. It's something that had to happen.
So you went on to deal with issues including date rape, apartheid, interracial relationships, discrimination. What kind of battles did you have to go through to get these shows made?
There were battles doing these shows that were not only relevant but topical. I mean, Murphy Brown gets on the cover of Time magazine for having a baby out of wedlock on television. We satirized the presidential campaign, Clinton against Bush. Mm-hmm. We were like, I don't know. I've never been so demonished. I mean, I was admonished. You can't do this, you can't do that. It was clever. It was on the level of anything Saturday Night Live would have done, or in Living Color, which was so popular at the time. It was so funny. But we were like, you can't do this. And I said, when the students on a campus are quiet politically, the nation is dead. If we don't have an opinion, if they don't have a voice and something they have to say, they're dead. So I fought for it because I came out of Howard University. We were the first school to take over the university. We were before Kent State. But they didn't send the National Guard into us. Our parents were out there with boiled eggs and orange juice begging us to come out. We never thought for a minute that you could die for speaking up in this country. But people at Kent State died. And I am now the head person in charge. I know that. We're going to do something that's going to have an impact. And this was funny. It was funny. It's funny stuff. All the candidates now became female, and all the wives were now men. Meaning it was Jill Blinton that was running. And her husband was, we were satirizing all those relationships. It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
So was that the key? I mean, they used to promo episodes of sitcoms that were about serious topics as a very special episode. But there were a lot of very special episodes on A Different World. Was humor the key to getting it through, to getting those done?
I thought so. This was a great platform. Yeah. You have to have a platform from which you spring. I learned that early on. If you don't have a platform, then you might as well keep your mouth shut. You got to have some way to get in that can ease it. It's like a doctor. Put on a glove, put a little jelly on him, just don't go do something. Humor was a great key, and we used it so well. But time after time after time, we just were scolded for it and I was brought into the principal's office. I remember when we were doing the episode about politics, Warren Littlefield called me on the phone. I was in the bathtub. And he said, the gloves are coming off, Debbie Allen. I hear you're having press conferences and just shitting all over NBC. I'm like, Warren, what are you talking about? I'm in my house. I haven't talked to any journalist. I don't even know what you're talking about. Somebody had said something to him that infuriated him. And I said, Warren, we're trying to do a good show. We're trying to do a good job. He and I came up at the same time together. We had the same sensibilities. And then politics got involved and people, and I don't know. It became more difficult to do what we did. And by the time A Different World went off the air, we went off so unceremoniously, so quiet into the night. They kept changing our times. Nobody knew when we were on, and then we just disappeared. But we're back on now. I mean, they can't play it enough.
Aside from what you told me about the actors, or trying to support the actors and have their input in terms of their characters, how did the actors respond to the changes?
The actors were so happy about the changes. When I got there, they were so happy. They were like, they almost were imprisoned. It was like I freed them to find the comedy. I remember telling them, stop it already. Because any good director, not even great, any good director, from where I sat, and I have at this point worked with the best. I've worked with Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse, Donald McKay, Steven Spielberg. I've worked with some of the best. And the best ones cast people that are right for the role and bring something to the role. Not just be a little cookie card cutter, just say the lines. You've got to bring something to it. You've got to come and live it. So I was trying to get everyone to live and see. And we would improvise sometimes downstairs and find things. We found something one time between Dwayne Wayne and Whitley where there was a sequence where he was thinking about her. The writers had him thinking about, what it would be like to kiss her. So I did it in slow motion. I had them come in slow motion and kiss, play some really crazy music. The audience laughed for 5 minutes. We had to stop the show. It was so funny. Well, that was a gift. That was a gift. I'm not trying to give writer credit. This is a gift. And so we had to shoot that scene 2 ways because it wasn't written that way. Because there was a particular writer who felt betrayed that we weren't sticking to what was written. The version that was the funniest one is the one that went on the air. But that's our job to do that. That's what we should do. So the actors were happy. They felt finally there was someone who could hear them. And so I started asking the actors. The first thing I did was write 10 storylines that you would like to see. And I gave it to the writers. And some of it actually got into the show. These were gifts. This is the collaboration. There is no way to success without that collaboration. Not in theater, television, film. It's just not, it doesn't work.
How do you feel about where a different world fit into the culture of the time? I mean, was it groundbreaking, do you think?
I thought it was incredible. A different world tripled the enrollment of historically black colleges and colleges, raised the level, but historically black colleges tripled the enrollment. I mean,
Went to college because of this TV show, A Different World. Let me know in the comments. Was it a historically black college or whatever college you went to?
it was like I had found lightning in a bottle twice. Fame, created performing arts schools all over the world. A Different World tripled the enrollment. That's quite a success story. Forget a rating. That is something that really matters. And we did something that mattered. And it's still on now, which is so great because when you see it now, you still relate to those stories.
And you took the writers on a field trip to a couple of black colleges, right? Morehouse and Spelman. Was that effective? Did they come out of that experience in a way that they were able to produce?
Yeah, I think it was important. It was important for them to go on a field trip because some of them had not really been. You know, it's like if you're going to do a movie, or for example, when I started directing Grey's Anatomy, what is one of the first things that I did? I went to the hospital and observed 3 hours of a bypass surgery. Mm-hmm. And I saw the doctors talking about their dinner engagements and arguing about something on the floor in the middle of this life and death crisis. Mm-hmm. You do your homework. That's my thing. If I don't do anything else, I will do my homework because I like it. I like knowing. So that was good. And they appreciated it.
Phoebe Snow sang the theme song first season, and
Yes.
then Aretha.
Aretha.
The second season.
Yeah.
Was there a method to that? Was there a reason behind that?
Well, we wanted to up those credits. We wanted to change it. Karen Mondebach actually had the idea, Debbie, you could do this, you could make it more like a video. You know, make it just more now. Because the world of the video, MTV was booming, so we jumped on that train. I called Aretha. You know, because Aretha won't go anywhere, honey, unless you put her on a bus, child. She ain't flying nowhere. But she was happy. She said, I'll do it, Debbie. She did it. She sang it. It was incredible. And then I designed the whole thing with a motion control camera. Mm-hmm. so that I could just flip them and have them doing so many different scenarios in one setting. It was great. It was great.
So how did Carsey Werner react to the changes, the pretty dramatic changes in the show, taking on the serious topics?
They wanted these changes. They were in the meeting with me after Bill Cosby had called me on the phone and said, this is what I want you to do. And then he said, you're going to have a meeting. And I sat with them. And they knew I came out of Howard University. So this was not going to be like something fly by night. This was going to be based on real experience. And the writers, there was so much richness there that they could pull from. And a lot of them were happy to do it. It wasn't like they didn't want to do it. They had not been guided in that direction prior to my coming.
Was there a show or a topic that you really wanted to do that NBC just put their foot down and you never got to do?
No, we actually did. One of the greatest shows we ever did was, I think, our season opener for the last season. It addressed the LA riots. And we sent Wayne and Whitley, who had gotten married now, on their honeymoon, and they were stuck in LA in the middle of the riots. And I'm telling you, it was hilarious. I mean, I did some very irreverent things. I had this woman coming out of a store, because everybody was stealing, all that stuff was happening. We had one, the woman came out of the store with, I think, a case of alcohol or something, and she said, I had her say, free at last, thank God Almighty is free at last. And it was like just showing how people had lost their minds. Yeah. Then we had Roseanne and Tom as looters as well. I said, come on, what is this? We only have black looters? White people were looting too. So they were okay with it. They were mad about it until it became Tom and Roseanne. And they came over and they had a good time with us. So that was a very controversial episode.
With Roseanne and Tom on A Different World. Let me know if you remember that episode and what did you think about that episode?
Very controversial.
So how were the ratings when the show got, when it's dealt with serious topics? Second season on, how did the ratings, did they respond?
Yeah, they were good. Ratings were really good. We were doing good.
There was an episode in 1991 that dealt with the Persian Gulf War. What was the premise of that?
Well, the whole thing came about because we were on the set and it was my birthday, the day that the Persian Gulf War broke out. And I stopped rehearsal. We had to stop because we had young people who could be called in. We had young people who had families that were now going to be affected. So it was important to address the Persian Gulf. Should we be there? Do we go over there? This is the conversation that we're having right now. That episode could come on tomorrow and it will be relevant to what is happening in the Middle East today. Do we go to Libya? Do we help the people? Do we let them just, deal with the genocide of a mad, despot or ruler that's been there generationally, for 10 generations? When does America speak up? When do we stand up? That's what it was about.
And Jasmine Guy wrote the episode?
Jasmine Guy. And this was another thing. This was another thing that was good about me coming there. It encouraged them to see themselves moving forward. Because Jasmine had been in New York, had seen me on Broadway on the stage, I had let her be a dancer on Fame when she still was underage. We just didn't tell. I said, I don't know that. Are you 17? Okay, you're fine. She watched my growth and development, as did Jada Pinkett Smith, all of them. So I was kind of an image, an icon for them of where they could get to. And it was good for us to give them that ability. You want to write? Come on, write on this show. You want to direct? Come on, let's do it. And that possibility became more real And she wrote it.
Do you have a favorite episode or one that at least has special meaning to you?
Oh, goodness, that's a tough question. I think if there's one episode that has special meaning to me, it would be the AIDS episode. Because not only was it the challenge of getting it done, and for anyone that's producing television, sometimes you have to do what's right, not what makes everybody happy. But then if you do something that's really, truly right and terrific, you can change lives. That episode will always resonate with me, that episode.
What episode got the most public response or fan response? Or
controversy?
Yeah.
Might have been the Mammy episode. The Mammy episode, Mammy Dearest, we reclaimed the image of Aunt Jemima. Because there's a lot of misconceptions about who Aunt Jemima is. Aunt Jemima was the mambo, that is the sorceress, the earth mother in the culture. She was the one that was given information about the Underground Railroad. She was the one that might even be poisoning some of the most evil masters to help people survive. Mammy was very important. And we needed to reclaim her and redrape her in that gingham fabric in her African beautiful self. That was such a difficult episode because we actually used blackface. And Cree Summers, it was difficult. They were young. They had no references other than disdain for that kind of caricature, but they didn't understand why it was important to portray it. So when Cree Summers had to put on the blackface, and she was in tears and she was upset, and she says, I can't stand this. I can't stand looking like this. And then I remember Chanel Brown, who is the beautiful black young little goddess that we hired. Charnel said to her, why? I look like that every day. It turned into an internal, dramatic schism that ultimately became very healing.
You had quite a number of very prominent guest stars who came on the show: Jesse Jackson, Tupac Shakur, Diane Carroll, Lena Horne. Did these people want to do the show? Did they feel like, because of the importance?
All of the guest stars you could possibly think of that came on the A Different World TV show, which one was your favorite? For me, I would have to say Criss Cross.
Some of the issues. It was a show they wanted to be involved in.
I think all of the guest stars wanted to be on our show. Patti LaBelle asked me to be on the show. I went to her concert one night, and she and our friends from back in my gypsy dancing days in New York, and she had just lost her sister, and her concert was so emotional and so moving. And she says, Debbie, could you do something for me? I said, Patty, what? What? She said, can you put me on A Different World? I'm like, girl, shut up. Are you kidding? You're on. When can you come? So I ran back with that news, and we decided to make her Dwayne Wayne's mom, and that was incredible. And that was the start of her getting her own show and a whole lot of things. But the people wanted to do the show. When Lena came, that was amazing. Lena Horne had said no to everyone for years and years and years and years. And she said yes to us because she believed in what we were doing, and she loved it. And she wanted to be a part of it. And it was so interesting because when she came, it was the week we were celebrating AFI and Elizabeth Taylor. And every studio in town wanted her to sit at their table. But she sat at my table. It was great.
I know this is a hard question, but do you have a favorite guest star, or at least one that really stood out in an episode for you?
Well, you know, let's see, we had Jesse Jackson, voter registration, Patty, we had Lena. I would have to say the guest star that really stood out the most to me is Diane Carroll as Whitley's mother. Because Whitley was really the most popular character on the show. And for us to get a glimpse into who she is and why, Diane was incredible as her mother. Diane Carroll was amazing. And we'd all loved her when she did Claudine and so many wonderful things that she'd done over the years. We had idolized her in Julia. That was the first black woman to ever have her own television show that I remember seeing as a kid. Diane Carroll as Whitley's mom was the most outstanding, I think.
Why do you think Whitley and Dwayne were such a popular a couple on the show?
You know, Whitley and Dwayne were so popular on the show because the chemistry between them was so right. Whitley was so annoyingly little princess and femme fatale, but wanting love. And, you know, Dwayne was so bright and intelligent and determined to become his own man. And the two of them, though so many people, I'm telling you, when I first said that's who needs to be together, thought it was ill pairing, it was what everyone would love because it made Whitley more vulnerable.
When it came down to the love aspect of being together, girlfriend, boyfriend on the show, I honestly thought Dwayne Wayne and Kimberly would have been a better match. But when I seen how Whitley and Dwayne Wade, the chemistry between the two, I loved, that they got together. Let me know in the comments. Did you want them two to get together, or did you see something different?
It made her more accessible that she would be with him. And it spoke to millions of kids that this guy could get that girl. You know, you don't have to look like Laurence Olivier to get the prettiest girl.
When you shot the final episode, did you know the show was over, or was it you did? Was that emotional?
It was emotional because twofold. It was the last episode, but more importantly, we had just been kind of unceremoniously told goodbye. Mm-hmm. And with our audiences as well. So, I mean, I can remember cheers going off and this one going off and the fireworks, and we didn't have any of that. And I thought we deserved it.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Honestly, looking back, I don't think I would have done anything differently.
So what do you think the lasting impact is? The show's on still, right?
That's it.
The social impact and the cultural impact.
Well, that the show is still on speaks to the value and the relevance and the great work that we all did. The writers, the actors, all of us. That we produced something that deserves to be in a time capsule.
Now, you've directed many other episodes of other shows. Mm-hmm. I want to mention 2 or 3. Just mention the title and just give me a real quick comment or your feeling about them. First, Family Ties.
Family Ties was incredible for me. It was the first time I ever directed multiple camera. And I was trying so hard not to like doing it. But I did. It was infectious. It was great. It was a time when
I know and remember the TV show Family Ties. Let me know in the comments, what was your favorite episode from that TV show?
You stayed up all night with the writers. The director actually stayed up all night with the writers. And by the time Gary David Goldberg said to me one more time, point well taken, but we're going to do the point well taken. But I said, you know what, y'all? I'm going home. Y'all just Show me what it is tomorrow. It was great. There was a great cast chemistry. I loved doing that show.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Fresh Prince, I directed the pilot, and Will Smith was just a bowl of cherries. You just wanted to eat him up. He just was yummy.
Will Smith. Now he had the kind of rapper thing going on. This is a real big first move for him. Did you see in him what he became in terms of a big star?
Well, I saw Will's willingness to try anything, and his appetite and his ability to bring such joy. He brought a smile on everybody's face every time. And that Alfonso Ribeiro, I stood up and fought for him because, they wanted to fire him during the pilot. I said, guys, this is the series. This is the oil and water. This is it.
Do you think this show would have lasted if they would have fired Carlton Banks, Alfonso Ribeiro? Do you think the chemistry of the show would have went as long as it did? Let me know in the comments. I want to know your opinion.
The two of them, this is his nemesis. Come on. Carlton, the two of them, come on. That was the show. That was the whole show, the two of them.
So what do you feel like you contributed as the pilot director for that show?
I think I contributed a sense of family, that I fought for Alfonso Ribeiro, that I stood up for what... Sometimes you have to hold people hostage to their own ideas because they don't trust. I didn't cast the show. I walked in and it was cast. I think I might have looked at... No, it was cast. And they didn't trust their own idea. And I had to fight with them. And so if I contributed anything, it was keeping that family together, making them understand that this worked. And this was going to be the show.
Everybody hates Chris.
Oh, everybody hates Chris. What a delight. What a fun show to work on. The whole cast was incredible. Ali Leroy, the head writer, executive producer, and Chris Rock, he would come in.
What's your favorite episode of the TV show Everybody Hates Chris?
And out. I had a glorious time on that show. I could be so creative. They were open to me, cinematically portraying whatever it was visually I had in my head. Sometimes I wanted camera verite, handheld, or when I did a real extreme close-up of somebody's mouth. I mean, all these things were valid for that show. They loved my creativity, and I loved that show, and the writing was so good and so funny, so relative and wonderful, just wonderful, great, the best.
You mentioned Grey's Anatomy. You did your homework.
Yes.
How was the experience of directing that?
Grey's Anatomy was, I'm telling you, it was amazing. It was traumatic because, when you're coming...
What was your favorite episode of the TV show Grey's Anatomy?
And even if you're experienced, and I consider myself very experienced, and you're still the new kid, at 50 some years old, you can still be the new kid on the block, honey. So I'm walking in, and I've never done the show before, but finally they go, well, let's try this Debbie Allen. And it was a great challenge for me. And what I realized, which I've realized before, is at the end of the day, if you really can communicate as a director, that is partly the most important skill. If you can communicate to the cast and make them understand why, if you can communicate to the crew and make them understand how we're going to do this. And I brought an energy, I think, to the floor that I don't know, might have been missing. Energy. I mean, we laughed a lot. I kept them. I walked on the set, and what did Patrick Dempsey do? He started doing jetés and singing Fame. I'm like, stop it. Patrick, stop. They're going to fire me. You're going to get me fired. They're not going to take me seriously. But you know what was good? It was great because he was always in a good mood. Even there's always challenges on Grey's Anatomy. There's a lot of challenges, but I would keep them in a good mood, in good spirits.
Among the many balls you've juggled is the Academy Awards. You were brought in 1982 to choreograph musical numbers, and you came back several times. How did you get that call?
I did the Oscars 10 times. I consider myself the artistic director of the show, of the musicality of it anyway, because it was, again, not unlike Fame. Debbie Will Determine. It was what I could think of. I was brought on by Gil Cates the first time, and I had a little bit of a swagger about it, because I'm like, child, it's about time y'all called me over here. Y'all had all these other tired children. It's about time. So they had this big idea. I had already done an incredible number on Motown that told the history of dance, of music, and through dance. It was incredible. And I think, in fact, they wanted that because they wanted to do, it was the 100th, I think it was the 100th anniversary of film. They wanted to do the history of. So they thought I could do it. And I could, and I did. So I had so many ideas. Oh my God. Because, the movies, I go to the movies every week. I still go. Every week, not just to eat the popcorn, although this is an attraction. I like the big screen. I'm a fan of going to the movies. So to me, the core of every movie is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and there's a war. I'm talking about in some of there's somebody fighting somebody. Even in Feifel, American Tail, the mice against the cats, there's somebody fighting. So I will never forget the first time I sat down with them, and I was full of all these ideas, and I was talking about the battle that, we would create this movie, and we would actually pay homage to great movies on the way that would give us music, footage, all this stuff that could be so rich, and we'd shoot footage. I mean, I was in it. And then I said, we'll have the backdrop of a war. And then somebody screamed, oh my God, for God's sake, they took a woman. I don't know where it was, somewhere in the Middle East. I'm like, when have they not taken a woman? I don't know what happened. Something happened. I said, name a day when it doesn't happen. In Africa, in the Middle East, in Israel. Name some place. It's just not something we need to run away from, is what I said. So Gil Cates said, yeah, let's do Debbie's idea. So he actually assigned me a new editor and let me go for it. And I actually had people going in and out of the screens. It was incredible. And then the day before we did it, he said, okay, he looked at me and said, kid, what's plan B if this doesn't work? I said, honey, there is no plan B. We are committed. And it was incredible. It had everybody just going crazy. So then they asked me again, and I would, create all these things. I know that my work inspired Disney to go into the theater. I did Beauty and the Beast on stage. I did Aladdin on the stage. I did all this stuff on the stage. I took cartoons and made them live. I took songs that were obscure. I will never forget when Maria de My Soul was nominated. And they were like, what? I said, look, okay, it was from Mambo Kings. And I was a fan. I had seen the movie. I said, look, we'll get Celia Cruz. And they said, who? I said, okay, let's get Placido Domingo. They said, yeah, Placido. I said, we'll get Arturo. So I put together a thing. I said, they won't even know what the song was by the time I finished. The number almost got a standing ovation. It was so hot. It was so hot. They kept asking me. And I was surprised and I think they kept asking me because I would come up with these great ideas. I was creative. The last one I did was Crouching Tiger. And by the time I did that one, I felt like, maybe it's time, because I had such a battle about what the set was going to be, because I didn't want it to be literal to what the set was in the movie. The minute you just do what the movie is, you're dead. You can't. I said, I want it stylized. So then the designer calmed down. He had a meltdown, and then he calmed down and he designed something that worked brilliantly. 10 times. I probably have the record for that too. I don't know. You go look and tell me. Tell me, do I have the record? You know what? It was interesting because I was so praised for doing it. The Aladdin number that I did two, the 2 songs were nominated. I did all this stuff and people loved it. Then after the second time, then they started ragging me. Oh, she's back again. Why are they dancing on the Oscars? They started writing nasty things. And then finally it was announced there would be no dance on the Oscars. And I'm like, okay, fine. Sorry. Duh. We're the only culture in the world that separates our arts. Everywhere in the world, if they're celebrating dentistry, they're dancing and singing about it. Nobody's trying to, sit there and grind teeth all day. But they said there was no dance. But what did they do? They had to have a kick line, honey. They had to do Blame It on Canada, a spoof, and they had to have a kick line. They just couldn't do it without us. I was so happy.
You won an Emmy on a special called Motown 30, What's Going On.
Yeah.
You choreographed a number, African-American Odyssey. Was that special for you?
Yes. African American Odyssey was the number that I think inspired the Oscars to hire me. It was the number where I went through the history of Motown and the history of us as a culture, African American culture, and I showed the parallel, the then, the now. I showed when the Supremes were dancing, the African step that it came from. It was incredible. It was breathtaking. It stopped the show. We had a standing ovation. And I was so proud of what we accomplished. Because there they were talking about, it started out with the boys arguing about who created hip-hop. MC Hammer, da-da-da, and then I walked out there as, Miss Dance Diva. I said, who created it? I said, sit down, it came from Africa. And then we just went through the whole thing. We went through, capture, slavery, captivity, plantation, gospel, jazz, blues, all of it. It was incredible.
Why was Amistad an important project that you brought to Steven Spielberg? You were a producer on that, a feature film.
Amistad is probably, in so many ways.
In the comments, have you seen the movie Amistad? And what was your thoughts of it? Me, I absolutely loved the movie. Beautiful work.
It's one of the most important things I've ever done in my life. And at the same time, it is definitely the most challenging thing that I've ever accomplished. It took me over 18 years. I was at Howard University in a bookstore, and I picked up a book called Amistad. It was a collection of essays from black intellectuals, academicians, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why is it called Amistad? Then on the front of the book, there was a one page that told the whole synopsis of the Amistad case. A slave's ship, African captives found on the coast of America, landing in the Supreme Court, pitting 2 presidents against one another. I'm like, where the hell was this story? I was an A student in history. Why wasn't this in my books? I was offended. I was appalled. I was enraged, and I was ignited to do something about it. And I knew we needed to make it a movie because the history books would never catch up in time. We needed to make it a movie so people would understand America's still who she's trying to become. And this image of this hero, Singbe, the way we say it, but Singbe, yeah, is something we need. I've had every man in my family, my father, my uncles, all in the armed services. My father's buried in a veteran cemetery, as is all my uncles. They all served. My cousin died. Why is it every time I see a movie, so many movies about war and this, the black men are somewhere in the corner shuddering and crying and blah, blah, blah. I said, we need this. So I was determined to tell this story. And this was my love for my father, my grandfather, my uncles, my cousins, all the men in my family and all the men that helped build this country. I did it for that and for us to finally face our shared history and look at it. It's one of the most difficult conversations right now to have in America about slavery. So Steven Spielberg, his son, and my son were in the same school. He had eaten some of my yellow grits over family breakfast, and I didn't approach him, but I said, I know I could, if I could just sit down with him. They said, you can't have a meeting with Steven. I was like, oh, please. So then finally, after I went through his executives, they said, okay, you got 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned to an hour and a half later. And I was so ready. Oh my God, after so many years of desperation and disappointment, going into people's office where they go, oh, is it a musical? I'm like, oh, okay, what? Kill the white people? That could be a number. I don't think so. No, it's not a musical. Steven Spielberg grasped this idea. It was fresh to him. It touched him. And every time, every question he had, I could answer because I had done my homework. I knew this like the back of my hand. Where was the abolitionist movement at the time? Where was Congress? Where were the laws? Slavery, blah, blah, blah. And we made this movie. And God bless Steven Spielberg. I love that man. I love that man in a way that he will never even really understand.
How do you feel about the extreme popularity of dance shows now? Dancing with the Stars. So You Think You Can Dance, where you were a guest judge.
I'm back on it now.
Comments. What was your favorite dance TV show? There was a few of them mentioned here, if it's one of those, or if you know of a whole different one.
How do you account for this interest and what most networks turned down initially?
Didn't the networks turn it down? I pitched a dance show 6 years ago. They said no. Anyway, these shows are so popular because when I give a lecture on the history of dance, I say this, and I really do believe this, that dance is the most original art form. Before man could write a note or play an instrument, we were stamping our feet on the ground. We were jumping, we were spinning, leaping in celebration of birth or in request for rain. Dance is the most original art form, and everybody has the spirit of the dance in them. So these shows have evangelized dance, have reawakened the world's spirit to dance, and it's just a blessing.
How do you feel about your experience directing Polly and then acting in it with your sister, Felicia Rashad? And you played sisters in that.
Well, we played sisters in Old Settler.
I'm sorry. That's right, Old Settler.
So you want to know about the Old Settler?
Sure, yes. Okay.
So Old Settler, Felicia and I worked together first on a big Disney movie called Polly. And I think I thought then, and I still think now, I'm her best director. And she said, she had showed me this piece, The Old Settler. And she had bought the rights to it. And thought we should make it into a movie. We could do it together. Then I had this opportunity with PBS Presents that they were going to go back to making movies. But they wanted things that were more contemporary. But I said, guys, this is a no-brainer. Me and Felicia together. It's small. It's intimate. It will come in on budget. It will be amazing. So they said yes. So Felicia and I played opposite each other, two old sisters in Harlem. And she falls in love with a younger man who ultimately abandons her and leaves her waiting. And I'm so grateful that he did, because I did not want to be alone. And it was so well received. The reviews were incredible. And we're still waiting for somebody to say, yeah, let them do it again. So we're actually working on something ourselves. You come up out of Texas, you come out of the time we came out of, you learn to just do it yourself. That's what we're doing.
So you first directed her as Aunt Polly in Polly?
Yes.
Okay. And that went well?
I gave Felicia her first movie of the week, Aunt Polly and Polly, because Bill Bland, who is the executive producer, head writer, Fame, had been brought in to adapt it into a story about a young black girl. And he said, there's nobody but Debbie Allen that could make this work and do this in this kind of time. I mean, there were like 7 dance numbers, musical numbers. It was musical. So I got the job. I said, hey, how about Felicia? Because Keisha Knight Pulliam was going to be Polly. I said, let her be on Polly. And she was thrilled to do it. And it was great. It is just now coming out on DVD, I understand. It's just now being released. And people have been asking for it for years. It is one of the best things Disney ever did, I think.
What do you have? What advice would you give to an aspiring director or someone in the performing arts who wants to become a director or a choreographer?
The advice I would give to someone who wants to be a director or choreographer, I would say, go somewhere and really train. Master one thing and see how it can open the path to so many other things. I trained as a dancer and I was a choreographer before I became a director. My sensibility about movement and where the eye goes and moving the camera was so developed as a choreographer first, but translates beautifully into the language of directing. So it's go somewhere and really train. And if you're going to be a director, take some acting classes so you know what it is to be an actor. So you know what you're asking people to do. Some of the best dancers do not make good choreographers, but you have to know the feel, you have to know the language, and you have to understand how to go deep inside. For dance and for acting, you have to know how do you build the circumstances. I was privileged to train with Uta Hagen in New York as a young woman. And when she told me perfect, that's when I stopped going to class and I said, it's time to go to work because I understand it now. Let's go to work.
And how would you like to be remembered?
Ooh, how would I like to be remembered? I'd like to be remembered as an artist who mastered many different worlds and who gave herself to the world and to young people.
Thank you, Debbie Allen.
I'd like to be remembered as a best-selling author, someone that can take my writings and anybody else's writings and put it to movies and TV shows that can help people transition from one level to the next. Let me know in the comments, how would you like to be remembered? This is Debbie Allen's interview, part 2 of 2. Let's have a conversation.